Well, even with the SS Stolitz slowly sinking, good to know old Captain Obvious is going down with it. Apology Tour was not what I expected. And I'm not just saying that because I made a half-hour video 8 months ago where I wrote my own version of the episode. Aw, you guys are sweet. But yeah, not only were my expectations subverted, they were also inverted, diverted, and perverted, both in terms of writing and reception. Instead of a mostly comedic adventure where Blitz sends out some sorries, the titular tour only takes up a minute-long montage, with everything else surrounding it being quiet, contemplative talking and emotional venting. And while the public's feelings towards Helluva Boss have never been unanimous, this is definitely the episode where the fandom has felt the most polarizing in regards to their responses, with some saying that they're officially done with the show after this, and others saying that it's never been better. And boy golly, what a time to be in this fandom, because I'm not on either side of this argument. While I'm definitely interested in seeing certain character arcs conclude, I'm also extremely nervous about how they're gonna pull it off. The way I see it, the series is at its most critical make or break point, where one simple mistake can mean utter disaster for the story, the characters, and maybe even the fandom as a whole. And based on what I've seen from Vivzi and crew in the past, I'm really mixed on whether or not they'll actually stick the landing. But before we talk about that, let's at least give some props to the actual episode. In a general sense, for my money, Apology Tour is good. It's way more tonally consistent than Full Moon before it, which still leaves me with a brain twinge whenever I rewatch it. Seriously, the Chorks really should have gone their own episode! The whole story is essentially one major reality check for Blitz, showing him in the most on-the-nose fashion possible just how much his actions have affected other people. Now we know from experience that Blitz's trauma is the main driving force pushing him to make these unfortunate decisions, a vain attempt to protect both himself and others from being in a surefire doomed relationship, a classic defense mechanism brought on by years of emotional failures. But as much as we may try to explain his bad actions away with a damaged mental state, the truth is that he objectively hurt a lot of folks and he is gonna have to face facts sooner rather than later. Explanations are not excuses, so this pimp of an imp does need to be held accountable for the multitude of lives he screwed up. And by the end of the episode, I think he finally understands that. Speaking of screwed though, I gotta give Blitz props for his impeccable taste in partners. Like, call my bro the Yukon, he is striking gold left and right, jeez. Anyway, point is that this is a story that absolutely needed to happen. Whether or not it happened too late in the series is up for debate, but I do feel like this is a very fitting way for Blitz to get a wake-up call that something in his life needs to change. And as always, Brandon Rogers is absolutely selling it. Whether it's heart-squashing emotion or visceral anger, his voice work combined with the amazing facial expressions and animation creates such an uncomfortable yet dismal atmosphere that perfectly fit with the personal conflict he's going through. I totally buy the fact that this guy has an internal security system being sent into overdrive. He can barely get a word out when he attempts sincerity, and any hint of true emotion is constantly shielded with sarcasm, swears, and anger. Heck, the opening of this ep is probably the most mad he's ever been towards Stolas, possibly to make up for that straightforward tell-all line that Stolas dropped on him the night before. He's probably still denying that what Stolas said back there was true, and his internal self is just wrestling with all that doubt. And when piled on with all the other emotional ringers he gets put through in this episode, especially during the Blitz hate party, just... jeez, this poor guy. Again, it needed to happen, but dang does the episode do a great job at making you feel bad for this dude while also acknowledging his wrongdoings. But luckily, he doesn't spend the entire night alone, as a certain succubus somebody does eventually get to jaw with him for a bit. Oh, Verosika, I missed you so freaking much. As sad as I am that this episode isn't entirely about your relationship with Blitz, what little we got out of you is just enough for me. We've already seen her as a put-together demon diva that slays both the audience and her exes, but now we're able to see a much more wholesome side to her. A side that honestly makes me love her even more. Just the fact that she threw this whole party for mutual Blitz exes to unwind and vent their frustrations already shows a degree of empathy and kindness I didn't expect. But even the little things, like the sweet way she warms up to Stolas and reassures him that he's in good company, kissing him on the cheek and calling him baby and honey, just... Blitz, I get that your mental panties are in a knot, but you turned down a girl who is kind, generous, sweet, worldly, rich, famous, and experienced in the sheets with the voice of an angel, the body of a goddess, and the ability to go anywhere in the world at will.
You had the full package and you returned to sender.
As if I didn't already feel bad enough for this guy. But aside from reassuring me that Stolas needs more gal pals, the real highlight of Verosika's appearance is her one-on-one with the boss man. We sadly don't get a full backstory on how they met and their life together, but we get enough to know that it was a pretty sad breakup, with the two being party pals for who knows how long, until V played the I love you card, leading to Blitz playing the F you card and running for the hills. The one moment where she was emotionally vulnerable and surprise, the mental fortress of 1,000 walls refuses to let her in. And yet, deep down, there is still a part of her that feels sorry for him. You could say this is just some of her residual love from the relationship sticking around, but it's possible that it could be something else too. I get the vibe that while Verosika is extremely mad at Blitz for what he did and who can blame her, it's possible based on what we know about her that she might also understand where he's coming from. Just this one interaction where she talks about reckless partying and being emotionally vulnerable for only one moment might be hinting at the fact that she has trauma of her own that she's working through. Maybe being a demon of lust made genuine emotional commitments near impossible for her since it's always just about sexual partners and clients. Maybe she pursued pop stardom to fill the void of affection in her life, to have thousands of fans screaming her name, only to realize that fan love is just as hollow and affectionless as her lust-fueled origins, leading to her developing similar insecurities about not being lovable. But even if none of that is true, it is nice to see V fill a sort of mentor or big sister role for Blitz when it comes to his internal struggles in this scene. And after pouring out her soul wholesale, we see that Blitz doesn't make any snarky comments or wisecracks. He just genuinely apologizes and she greets that with a warm smile, probably happy to see that he is making some progress even if it is small. She gives him some solid advice about moving on from Stolas, and after wearing her heart on her sleeve, she offers him some heart cake on a plate. The whole thing ends with Blitz walking to his van, actually taking the time to soak in the depressed reactions of those he's damaged, while a new Verosika song plays in the background, showing that she was essentially the one who really opened his eyes to the situation. Honestly, if the only complaint I have about Verosika is that I wish we got to see more of her, you know you just used the character in a masterful way. Also, killer ensemble you got there, girl, and even kinda symbolic. You're still in pieces over your impish ex, and your outfit reflects that. I guess the last thing to mention would be the Blitz and Stolas interactions, but honestly, I'm not even gonna bother. Pretty much everything I have to say about the current state of Stolitz was said in my full moon review that nobody watched, with this episode basically just addressing and reaffirming everything I mentioned. Stolas' one-dimensional understanding of romance and ignorance towards the real problem? Addressed. The idea that Stolas gets all his relationship knowledge from shallow dump-like rom-coms instead of actual experienced people? Addressed. Blitz's self-loathing and defense mechanisms preventing him from giving straight answers when confronted with genuine emotion? Addressed. Albeit a bit blatantly. Blitz checking in on the status of Martha and Mayberry after the events of the first episode? Well, didn't need to be addressed, but hey, good for them. I'm not gonna say that either of their talks come anywhere close to the Verosika chat I already mentioned, since, again, it's mostly stuff we already know. But I am glad that these two were able to properly exchange some words without Blitz being overly defensive or Stolas being overly fragile. And like I said before, the execution of every scene, visuals and performance-wise, is second to none. Hearing Stolas just be completely wasted is equal parts hilarious, adorable, and really sad, and I loved it. Some may not like the fact that this episode is almost nothing but talking, but I found it engaging and amazingly executed. So yeah, if we're talking about Apology Tour's quality on its own, I would say easy 7 out of 10. Only held back by some strange dialogue choices, limited rewatchability, and the occasional pacing flub. Not to mention how this episode feels like it happened a little too late in the series, given the progress we've already seen with Blitz. So, what exactly has me feeling mixed on the show, especially after another above-average banger? Well, if you want an answer to that, look no further than the episode's signature song, All To You. In general, this is my new favorite song in the series, hands down. The music, the visuals, and the singing are borderline perfection. And whoever's idea was to have Bryce Pinkham belt out a rock ballad which perfectly plays to his vocal strengths needs a raise, a promotion, and an extra bag of chips on lunch breaks. This song is a masterpiece and I love it. But my issues arise when we get into the lyrics. It starts off in a predictable place, with Stolas venting about how Blitz broke his heart and how much it hurts and how much of a mother effer Blitz is for everything he put him through. Basically coming from the mindset of Blitz was in the wrong and I was the victim, like a lot of people at this shindig. But then during the third verse, things start to shift. with Stolas actually being self-reflective about his own mistakes in their relationship. Initially, in his eyes, he did everything he could to save their bond after hearing Blitz's gripes at Ozzie's. But looking back, maybe that's not all that was wrong with them. Did he miss the deeper truth lying beneath the surface? Does he still have a lot more to learn about what's truly plaguing Blitz? It's starting to dawn on him that maybe all this is not just about their deal or about the sex, it's about something else. Something he doesn't fully understand yet, but something he knows is wrong. He starts throwing out possibilities of what the problem could be, all of which are somewhat true even if he doesn't realize it yet. Did he come on too strong? Yes and no. As a whole, he wasn't capable of fully understanding the true issues their relationship was facing and only tried to mend the problem with surface-level romantic gestures. In that way, he didn't come on strong enough. And yet when he did do gestures that were more grand without warning, he wasn't patient enough with Blitz when his feelings weren't immediately reciprocated. Not to mention all the times that he aggressively pushed the sex-forward mentality of their relationship, even if it was mostly due to poor communication. Did he read this all wrong? Yes and no. He was able to pick up on the fact that their bond was too sex-focused and made strides to try and improve that, but again, he believed that was the only problem when in reality, the issues run much deeper. Do they just not belong? Yes and no. At the moment, they're completely incompatible, basically being on entirely different planes of misunderstanding, whether that be knowing too little or knowing too much, being too vulnerable or not being vulnerable enough. But if they put focus towards working on themselves and maybe throw some other minor relationships in there, they could easily rekindle the spark and maybe even find eternal happiness one day. Then the verse ends with a constant stream of what ifs and whys, perfectly showing off how Stolas' lack of guidance on love, including from Blitz, has led him down a path of utter confusion and questioning that still persists to this day. And the fact that he just can't understand anything hurts him deep down. All the while, Stolas keeps getting reassured by Verosika in text that he was not in the wrong, all ending with a final reprise of the opening line where Stolas shyly succumbs to his two backup singers about all of this being Blitz's fault, even if deep down, he knows that's not true. It's obvious from these lyrics that the show is self-aware about the Stolitz relationship being a mutual dumpster fire on both sides, and that each of them need to put in work if they want this thing to get off the ground. And now that Blitz has had a full episode of people chewing him out and hopefully setting him on the right path, the lyrics of this blue-blooded Birdo ballad seem to imply that Stolas is going to get a huge self-reflective episode of his own coming soon. Right? Well, therein lies my problem. As much as I hate to say it, given what I've seen in the show so far, I'm not entirely sure what this little cliffhanger is going to lead to, if anything. Listen, as kind as I've been to Helluva Boss since the beginning, even I'll admit there's one titanic flaw that's plagued the series for years now, one that I've actually mentioned in other videos, and that is its terrible reputation with setups and payoffs. Vivzi's impish brainchild has a bad habit of presenting incredible things that look like they're going to be resolved in a spectacular fashion, only for most of them to remain dormant for months and even years at a time. And when they are eventually retrieved and brought back to the forefront, it can range from pretty worthwhile to really underwhelming. Take almost any of the returning villains, for example, like Striker, Crimson, the Cherubs, the Dorks, etc. While it's nice to see them again, each of their comebacks was done in a way that was either pointless or detrimental to the characters or story. Crimson's return in Oops felt kinda worthless, as he mostly just sat in the background doing nothing, as opposed to X's and Ooze, where he had plenty of intimidating and hilarious moments. Striker's comeback in Western Energy was fun, at least, with a cool fight scene, and I do like the idea of his composed badass facade slipping as he faces more and more defeats, but I feel like we were missing an episode in that downfall, as the contrast between Harvest Moon and this one felt so drastic. And the Chorks... yeah, let's just say that every time I rewatch Full Moon, I get more and more annoyed that these guys were even included at all. This episode was really onto something with the beginning and the ending, but having this slapped in the middle of it just hurts the story it was a part of. A few good laughs at the Holy Babu's expense is not worth the uneven pacing and tonal shifts. But the biggest victim of this setup-payoff problem is the Stolitz relationship itself. I get that in shows like this, the will they, won't they aspect is the thing that keeps people hooked. It's been proven successful in tons of shows before. We want these guys to find true happiness when all is said and done. But Blitz x Stolas is less of a will they, won't they, and more of a will they, won't they, are they? While I've been able to keep up with the ship just fine, they definitely made some strange executional choices, especially in Season 2. I mean, the circus was a super solid episode that, despite some pushback, managed to add to Stolas and Blitz's characters in meaningful ways. I still stand by the fact that it's able to hold its own against the series' best. But some of the stuff that followed was stop and go at best and very bizarre at worst. Like, as much as I tried to explain away some of the odd choices in episodes like Seeing Stars, even if what I said was what they were going for, it doesn't really come off that way. We just witnessed one of the biggest turning points in their relationship thus far, with both guys being emotionally shattered by the events that transpired, and yet there's almost no evident follow-up to the events of that episode anywhere to be found in the next adventure, even with Blitz and Stolas directly interacting for most of it. I get that their priorities at the moment are their missing daughters, so personal matters need to take a step back for the moment, but their interactions make it feel less like these events are in the back of their minds, and more like these events didn't happen at all. There's a way to communicate stuff like this properly, and I just don't feel like they did it right. Then you have the texts from Western Energy, which do a decent job at showing Stolas' efforts to patch things up. It's clear that he has been making attempts to nullify Blitz's view of their relationship as nothing but sex, even if Blitz is not receptive to them, and it's shown in a very subtle way. Only problem is that this is all we get in terms of his reparation attempts aside from getting the Osmodian crystal. Stolas' bold claims about all he's done to support him and get to know him do ring kinda hollow when this one blink and you'll miss it scene is some of the only backing we get for that statement post Ozzie's. And trust me, all of this would be fine if it led to something greater, like some kind of follow-up episode where we see the context of these texts in deeper detail. Heck, we got that full moon episode coming soon where the duo are gonna meet up again, and you know drama gonna be cooking overtime with this one. Why not have half that episode dedicated to Stolas' perspective, where he reflects on exactly where he went wrong in their relationship, using those texts as a framing device to look at the aftermath of major series events, and maybe a few unseen ones thrown into the mix for good measure.
Nope. Mech fight.
Mac fight?
Mech fight.
Yeah, I hate to repeat this again, but this episode was just very poorly structured. The writers had the perfect opportunity to give Stolas' apparent efforts some more meaning before the inevitable breakup, and they decided to set up the Dork Cherub team up instead. Again, why didn't they just give them their own episode? You could have just done what you did with Truth Seekers, where you set up the Cherubs getting captured by the Dorks, let them in on their little secret operation, catch Blitz, and then do whatever you gotta do from there. They really do feel like two opposing episodes compressed together that could have been masterpieces if Vivzi let them have their space. Honestly, the more I talk about these flaws in Stolitz's execution, the more I realize how much it highlights some of the series' other shortcomings, like the tonal issues and the pacing problems. Not to mention how some of the show's signature character arcs and dynamic shifts are lacking in sufficient meat to really feel like they're earned. It obviously doesn't ruin the series for me, cause why else would I still be here reviewing and praising it, but dang, do the small annoyances really pile up sometimes. So based on all of this, I hope you can excuse me if I don't have complete confidence in Spindle's ability to follow through on all this. I haven't lost complete faith in them or anything, but they are walking an extremely fragile tightrope in regards to the state the show is in right now. People are starting to think that the main conflict of the Stolitz arc is going to be Blitz, and Blitz alone needing to fix what he's done, while Stolas is only going to get minor development at best and coddling at worst. And I imagine that would absolutely destroy the ship for most people if it hasn't been poisoned for them already. Stolitz, at least from what I picked up, is meant to be a two-sided train wreck. But at the moment, Blitz seems to be the one taking the brunt end of the punishment, both from the show itself and even some of the fans. If you combine the events of Full Moon and Apology Tour, Blitz got completely obliterated with the clear message that he needs to do better. Meanwhile, Stolas for the most part got off scot-free, with a handsome buff imp as his entourage for the evening, and only a passing musical thought of, maybe, just maybe, I was in the wrong. Again, I get that this is likely meant to be set up for Stolas' own episode where he too gets put on blast for his own objectively bad actions while in this pairing, but I'm just so afraid that when it does come out, it's either going to be late, mishandled, or underplayed. And this is definitely something that needs to be done soon, properly, and with as much force as an atom bomb. I adore Stolas as much as the next guy, but he's screwed up big time and he needs to be held accountable, even with his trauma in mind. And then once his head is screwed on just right, he can work towards further self-improvement. And hey, Blitz isn't entirely off the hook either. He was thoroughly brutalized in this episode, sure, but we do still need to see him make actual strides to better himself, which itself is also a lingering plot point that needs to be capitalized on. You wanna know what I want? I want Mastermind to be the episode to break the Birdo and the boss. I want the dorks and cherubs to capture both Stolas and Blitz and visually project their inner thoughts on a screen looking for more intel. Become masters of their minds, essentially. I mean, there is literally a clip in the Season 2 trailer where we see Blitz's thoughts displayed on a green-tinted monitor. That has to be what they're hinting at there. And Stolas is forced to watch in horror as he sees firsthand every internal trauma that Blitz was forced to go through, finally getting a solid, unavoidable picture of what he was missing regarding their relationship. All that stuff he did to him, while not intentionally malicious, struck him extremely deep and only made his life more miserable. Then afterwards we get a view of Stolas' memories, including the major failures in his life and some of the people that he screwed over, like his butlers and even Octavia to a certain degree. Basically, if it's impossible for both sides to communicate normally, they're gonna have to witness an inescapable projection of their partner's traumas to finally get a good idea of what they're going through. You can then follow all of that up with Sinsmas, where Stolas gets even more straightening out while attending a gathering of Hell royalty on the solstice or something. You can have Blitz save Stolas from Androphis, maybe they both have a good Frozen-esque cry with Stolas saying he's sorry for everything he's done, Blitz can do the same once he melts, and they can finally get started on their paths for personal betterment. They wouldn't get together as a couple right away, but they can at least understand each other properly and actually begin communicating on the same level for once. However they pull it off, I don't want anything to be half-baked. I want tears, I want pain, I want retribution, and I want all of that soon. This is what I mean when I say this is Helluva Boss's last chance. Everything about the show, its stories, its signature couple, even parts of its fandom and reputation, seem to be riding heavily on whether or not they'll be able to nail these last key character moments within a timely manner. Out of all the setups and payoffs they've done, whether you want to argue they were done well or not, the ones set up in Apology Tour are easily the most important ones to ace in the series moving forward. While the series can get messy, it's managed to be engaging at the same time, and something I still love going back to time and time again. But if they somehow blunder this major climax of the Blitz and Stolas ship, it might be the last straw for most people. The diehards will always stick around and likely enjoy the show no matter what, but for those that have stuck with the relationship through all its ups and downs, including me, making this pivotal moment in the series end on an uneven distribution of blame or a substanceless whimper would just be really disappointing. I'm still staying on the Stolitz ship currently, but I'm also keeping a sharp eye out for any rocks or jetties we might hit along the way, cause we're not in calm waters anymore. Just, please, Spindlehorse, I love you guys so much. Just don't let us down. Give Stolas and Blitz equal blame and have them mutually work towards a brighter future. It's the least you can do to show that your fan base means anything at all to you. Alright, those were my thoughts on Apology Tour and what could possibly precede it. I guess I owe an apology of my own for being kinda negative in this one, but hey, I'm not devolving into a full-blown hater or anything. I just think the show has a few notable rough edges, which is fine, but we're now at a point where things need to be as smooth as possible if they want to succeed. With all that said though, what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on Apology Tour as an episode? And are you more on the positive or negative side when it comes to HB's imminent future? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.